I am new to the MMO genre, only just beginning my first adventure with Final Fantasy XIV not even 6 months ago. I've thoroughly enjoyed Final Fantasy XIV, what it has to offer within its content structure, MSQ, dungeons, raids, glam, and so forth. And even then, that seems to only be scratching the surface. Given Final Fantasy XIV's depth, I would imagine it difficult to sink my teeth into another MMO, and yet there lies within me a curiosity. Is the joy I experience with Final Fantasy XIV exclusive to that title? Or is there something about the larger MMO genre that is calling to me? I can't call myself an MMO enthusiast if my only experience is tied to one game, and certainly would be untrue if I had not tasted of what many would consider a staple game within the genre, namely World of Warcraft. Perhaps it's the marketing efforts performed by Blizzard or the organic word-of-mouth wildfire that has seemingly got a grip on me, but I've had a growing interest in World of Warcraft as of late, a game that, despite having minimal exposure to, is pulling on the gamer soul within. But why now? Why didn't I start with World of Warcraft given its wild success and loyal fanbase? After all, from what I've heard, dungeons and raids are incredibly fun in this game, both being the reasons I began my Final Fantasy XIV journey. I believe the reason that I didn't begin my journey with World of Warcraft was because of the combination of barrier of entry and community culture. I've heard all too often the allegation that World of Warcraft players are less tolerant of noobs, something I know I would be categorized as since my all but recent unfamiliarity with the genre often leaves me feeling less in tune with basic functions of the game. And since my main draw to MMOs are group content, I fear my experience with WoW would prove unfun. Additionally, I remain confused exactly how to digest World of Warcraft content and which version is the best for a completely new player. Do I play Classic? Do I play Retail? Do I need add-ons? How do I play the game from start to finish, ensuring that I am able to experience every expansion like the original players did? These two concerns combined have kept me away from World of Warcraft. That is, until today. I suppose curiosity has sprouted, leaving me unable to resist this game any longer. So today I'm going to give you a new player perspective on the retail version of World of Warcraft. Welcome back to the channel, my nerds. I hope you're having a great day. Let's get into it. Loading into World of Warcraft for the very first time was nothing short of incredible. I must admit that the level of endorphins I experienced as a new player while sitting on the character creation screen was unreal. I loved looking at all the race options and their class variants, which, speaking of classes, seeing so many different ones made me want to make a character for each one just to try it out. Historically, I'm a junkie when it comes to games that give you a lot of control on playstyle, namely jobs or class systems, and World of Warcraft did not disappoint. After spending far too long looking at all the class and race options, I ultimately chose to play as a Blood Elf Death Knight, aligning me to the Horde, which is an interesting choice to make. It would seem that the Horde is filled with what appears to be more villainous type characters, while the Alliance appears to be more heroic. Now, after loading into the game, I meet the Lich King, a very interesting looking character, who appears to be leading an assault on the lands below. I am tasked with a few starter quests to get my character up and going, which I admittedly struggled completing. The quest to make my Death Knight weapon left me confused on how to actually use the forge. So after running around for 15 minutes, I googled it and eventually figured out how to use the forge, again confirming my noobish nature. However, once I got through the intro quest, I was very pleased with how immersed the class quest made me feel. I truly felt as though I was a Death Knight, as my assignments were focused on bettering my death nature. The quest to loosen a failed initiate and slay them was really the tipping point for me to fully immersing myself in the role-playing as a Death Knight. And from that moment forth, I fully embraced my calling to serve the Lich King. Once descending from the Lich King's floating fortress, I brought with me the wrath of my lord and exacted his will on the inhabitants of the lands below. I got new assignments from my lord's commanders and eventually slaying the locals and stealing horses, all which aided to the efforts for our invasion. There was an incredible immersiveness that resulted from the structure of the Death Knight story. I operated missions from an encampment filled with other Death Knights and servants of the Lich King. The music here was ominous, juxtaposed from the city below our looming stronghold. I met other Death Knights, even challenged them in combat, and growing in my reputation, ashes to ashes, so they say. After gaining the approval of my leadership and growing darker with every skull collected from my slain enemies, I began to notice the overworld around me change. The sky grew orange as though the blood spilled beneath it stained the very atmosphere. After performing my onslaught, the town actually showed signs of being pillaged. Houses were burned down, bodies strewn across the fields, servants of the Lich King swarming the area, and citizens even screaming as I approached. I felt like my career as a Death Knight had real impact on the world around me, again allowing me to roleplay in a truly amazing way. One mission that really impressed me was when I was asked to sneak past the enemy line using a minecart. As I was being rolled down the hill past hundreds of soldiers, my jaw dropped. Up until this point, I felt like a powerful being bent on exacting the Lich King's wrath, but when I saw how outnumbered I was, I actually felt afraid. But recounting the mindset of Death Knights, I embraced the saying, ashes to ashes, and rolled further past enemy lines. I found myself on a massive boat equipped with 3 massive harpoon-like weapons that launched explosives. I quickly mount one and began assaulting those who oppose my king. Waves of soldiers began storming the boat, and I am overwhelmed. I fail the mission and slain in combat. Death in World of Warcraft is an interesting concept. Instead of respawning, you enter into a spirit world where you must reclaim your body, which I can imagine, depending on the distance, can be quite burdensome as a mechanic. Running back to my shamefully failed corpse, I reclaim my fallen body and immediately mount the weapon where I exact bloody revenge and wipe out the remaining of the enemy army. The quest assigned to the Death Knight has been an incredible experience and allowed me to truly embody and roleplay as the weapon of the Lich King. I love the impact that my quest campaign has on the world around me and the unique culture that is taught among the Lich King followers. Some of the difficulties I experienced with World of Warcraft during my initial playtime, I'm going to attribute to user error. I admittedly found some of the quests quite difficult to complete simply because I didn't know how to trigger the completion event. For example, there was a mission where I was instructed to steal a horse and return with it to my camp. I ended up stealing 4 different horses because I didn't know how to trigger the quest complete. Thanks to Google, once again, I learned that you had to use an ability, which I overlooked, to actually trigger the next phase of the quest. There were a few other moments like this where I had to stop and Google how to trigger the quest completion, but again, I attribute this con to user error. Now, other cons in the game, again, likely user error, is the biggest gripe I had was that no one would talk to me. I tried interacting with other players and none would engage, which for me is a big part of the MMO draw. I want to make friends, I want to connect with others, but perhaps I wasn't targeting correctly, I don't know. I will leave this aspect of the game to the professionals and ask you to address this in the comments. Do players in World of Warcraft enjoy speaking to randoms? I have had a great success making friends in Final Fantasy XIV and really enjoyed the community aspect, but again, the allegations of the community and WoW being less than pleasant is a little concerning. Again, I will attribute the lack of response again to user error, but I am very curious. Do players enjoy talking to new players? I don't know. Let me know in the comments. However, the pros of World of Warcraft completely overshadow the cons. Aside from the main quests, I love the art style and how the overworld feels weighty. I love that mobs actually can pose a real threat. I couldn't just run through an area and not aggro a swarm of angry villagers. And if enough gathered, it could actually be a problem for my Death Knight. The other pro is the skill tree. Now, I loved having that much control on my progression, and once again, made me love the class system in WoW. Not only do you choose your race and class, but you also have control on how the class is specialized, granting new abilities within your class, which is just super fun. Now, the real test for me is what I call the sleep test. And I use the sleep test to determine if I really love a game or if it's simply momentary bliss. Now, when applying the sleep test to World of Warcraft, I apply the following. I play a long session, I go to sleep, and then rise the next day. And upon rising, I ask myself, do I want to play said game? Now, when applying this to World of Warcraft, I would say yes. WoW passes the sleep test, and I was very eager to continue my Death Knight playthrough the next morning. I have to say that as a new player, I grossly underestimated the fun that World of Warcraft had in store. And this isn't even accounting for actual dungeons or raids, which I hope to cover in future videos. Overall, I would say that World of Warcraft has had an incredible first impression on me as a new player. And who knows, if this video becomes interesting to my community, I may even consider doing a WoW series. Overall, World of Warcraft has been magical in my first few hours of playing the game as a new player. Again, I really enjoyed the art style. The overworld and its changes really made me feel immersed. And honestly, I'm very excited to try out other classes and other races and to see how their stories and their worlds continue to shape and play out through the lore, which is something I'm very interested in doing a deeper dive, understanding the lore of the game. Now, I did voice some other concerns earlier in this video, namely add-ons and whether to play retail versus classic. So if you are a professional World of Warcraft player, I would ask that you all consider leaving me some tips in the comments below. Do you recommend I go back and play classic, or should I play retail and continue my adventure? Additionally, what are add-ons specifically? Are they necessary for gameplay? I've read that they're akin to mods that are features that are grossly misrepresented or missing in the game, but are they really needed? Are they really necessary to play the game? I'll leave that to you all in the comments. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, nerds. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you then. Bye-bye.